Hi, I'm Matt Manny. I want to welcome you to this session in our series of Launch. Forget your comforts, set your course, and follow your calling. My goal is to help you to become more effective in who God created you to be and to accomplish all that He has called you to do. In this video, we're going to look specifically at understanding and finding direction for your life. We're going to talk about the compass. In Luke 5, 1 through 11, we're going to look specifically at some direction words that are used there in that passage of Scripture. We'll start off in verse 2. It says, "And he saw two ships standing by the lake, but the fishermen were gone out of them." That is, he saw that their direction was not in those ships. Jesus takes the opportunity then to ask Simon if he can go ahead and get in his ship and to be pushed out in the water a little bit so that he can go ahead and speak to the people. When he's finished speaking to the people, in verse 4 it says that he says to Simon, "Launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." Simon then responds to Jesus Christ and he says that we've toiled all night and we've taken nothing, but because of what you said, I'm going to go ahead and let down the net. We understand then the next direction that they went was this, that they had gone ahead and let the nets down and they caught such a great amount of fish that they had to beckon to James and John, their partners, to go ahead and come and help them. They loaded up both ships with so much fish that the ships began to sink. In response to this, in verse 9, the Bible says that Peter was astonished and everybody that was with him because of the amazing catch of fish. In verse 10, it says that Jesus says to James and John and Simon, or Peter, to go ahead and he says, "Fear not, from henceforth thou shalt catch men." And when they had brought their ships to land, they forsook all and they began to follow Jesus Christ. There's an amazing story about John Wilkes Booth and the compass that he had. As the story goes, John Wilkes Booth's pocket compass is more evocative of his desperate 12-day flight on the manhunt after he had assassinated President Abraham Lincoln. He had a Confederate operative by the name of Thomas Jones who helped him to go ahead and plan out by candlelight John Wilkes Booth's course from the north down to the south. And the compass that he had played a very pivotal role in that process. What's amazing today is that a John Wilkes Booth compass that he had that's located in a museum there in Washington, D.C. It shows that the steel needle still dances on the spindle and it's pointing south. When he was trying to cross over the Potomac, he got confused in the darkness of the night, and instead of heading south, he ended up heading north by accident. We find this, that direction is so crucial. Your present decisions will become your past perspective, which will determine your future destiny. When we consider direction, we find this, that our direction is, first of all, number one, determined by Jesus, and number two, it's established by your response. The shortest distance between 2 points is what? Well, it's a straight line. But the shortest distance between 2 points is obedience to Jesus Christ. What keeps us from moving forward, if you think about, there's the deceived, it's the crazy cycle. It's when we go in circles. There's the distraction, the temptation to go left or right. There's the discouraged where we don't have the motivation we once had. It's when we're doubtful, we're uncertain that we stop, or defensive, that we're fearful that we go backward. Those are different reasons that keep us from going forward. When you consider where you're going, what direction are you facing, it determines the decisions that you make. How do you spend your time? How do you spend your money? How do you handle your relationships? How do you handle the opportunities you have? All those answers will determine the direction you're going. If you're going nowhere, so will your time, money, relationships, and opportunity. If God is the fixed point in our universe, every day means we are taking a closer step toward God or away from God. Our greatest fulfillment in life is to be in a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. When you're fulfilling who God created you to be, and when you're fulfilling what He has called you to do, you'll be heading in the correct direction. So our question for us, though, in this series is, how do you know when you're heading in the wrong direction? Well, there's a couple ways. If you have arrogance, if you say, I'm going the right way no matter what anybody tells me, most likely you're heading in the wrong direction. If you're melodramatic, I'm going this direction so everybody can look at me, probably heading in the wrong direction. If you use excessive caution, I won't go anywhere until I'm sure it's safe and it's fail-proof, probably heading in the wrong direction. If you have habitual distrust, I won't go that way because someone I trusted went that way and they hurt me. So we use other people's as our excuse. Maybe there's the aloofness. Am I supposed to be going somewhere? I love that one. How about eccentricity? I'm going to the land of Lucky Charms with marshmallows and unicorns and fairy princesses. Somebody who doesn't have any direction. It's always kind of in the eccentricity. How about passive resistance? Direction is really, really important. I mean, I really believe in direction, but just don't judge me or pressure me or ask me why I'm not going anywhere. Then there's the person who's the perfectionist. The steps I take are really solid and they look great. I take the exact amount of steps every day. I have increased my stepping by 22% since last year. My energy consumption is just right. I'm just heading in the wrong direction. I'm looking at the tree and missing the forest. Or there's the person who is eager to please. Everybody else is going a certain direction, so I want to head that direction too. Where do you think I should go? Where do you want me to go? Here's a direction evaluation. What is one personal challenge you are presently facing that is keeping you from moving forward and taking a forward direction in life? What is one work challenge you are presently facing that is keeping you from moving forward in a forward direction in life? What is the single most important help you could get from God right now to be able to help you move forward in life? Here, you think about this. How are you doing emotionally, physically, and spiritually? If you're looking at a gas gauge, are you empty, quarter tank, half tank, 3/4, or full when it comes to your emotional energy? How about your physical energy? Are you empty, a quarter tank, a half tank, 3/4, or full tank? What about your spiritual energy? Are you empty, a quarter tank, a half tank, 3/4, or a full tank? When we can understand where we're at on that evaluation, we can begin to understand the direction we're heading. Here are 4 keys to determining direction in your life. First of all is this: you're not alone. Jesus' presence in your life must be real. In verse 3 it says that he entered into one of the ships, which was Simon's, and he prayed that he would thrust out a little from the land, and he sat down and taught the people out of the ship. Jesus Christ's presence literally for Simon was there. You think about this. Listen to him when you make decisions. Listen to Jesus when you're discouraged. And listen to Jesus when you're uncertain. Just like Peter talked to Jesus, I believe we can go ahead and pray and seek Jesus' face and ask him and say, what should I do next? What direction should I head in? And then sit quietly and wait for the Holy Spirit of God to impress upon our hearts where we should be going, what we should be doing next. If you can't hear from Jesus about what you're supposed to do in a given situation, think back to what was the very last thing that Jesus wanted you to do, but you didn't do. What was the last thing he impressed upon your heart, but you failed to do? Second thought is this: you're fully equipped. Jesus will never direct you beyond your capacity, but within your ability. In verse 4 it says, when he had left speaking, he said to Simon, launch out into the deep and let down your nets. And Simon Peter responds by this, and he says, Master, we have toiled all night and we've taken nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, we'll go ahead and let down the nets. What we see as I can't usually means I won't. It's not that Peter couldn't launch out, it was that he had every reason not to launch out. For you and I, we deal with the same thing. In the short-term direction, it'll always be a reflection of a long-term destination. Your abilities don't allow Jesus to use you. Your failures don't limit Jesus from using you. But your response to Jesus is what allows you to be used by him. And your resistance to Jesus is what limits you from being used by Jesus Christ. The third point is this: you are born for this. You are born to go this direction. Where Jesus has called you to go, he created you to specifically go there. In verse 10, Jesus says to Simon, fear not, from henceforth thou shalt catch men. He told Peter, this is what you're created to do. And Peter, James, and John follow up that by forsaking all and following him. Fear changes our perspective of ourselves and Jesus. Fear forces us into a posture of dependence and humility upon Jesus. Fear takes us to an even greater level of responsiveness to Jesus Christ. Between where you are and where Jesus ultimately wants to lead you is a directional test. He's going to ask you and test you to see if you're willing to follow his voice in the right direction. Before you can truly live for Jesus, you must die to your inclinations, your dreams, and your desires, and take on his dreams, desires, and inclinations for your life. Our directional problem has more to do with a hearing issue as opposed with a foot issue, in that our ability to go has more to do with an issue of our ability to hear. In conclusion, what does Jesus ask you to do that you're fearful of doing? Think about, why are you so fearful of it? What has Jesus provided you to overcome that fear? There's an incredible story of a young girl by the name of Kara Tippett. She had gone with her husband and her family, her kids, to Colorado to go ahead and start a church. And their story is truly amazing in that they had kind of left all and went ahead to get this church going, to get it started. When they had arrived there in Colorado, as she tells her testimony, she had, at a Sunday evening service, gone ahead and she fell forward and she had messed up her lip, busted up her lip, and They went to go get her husband, who's the pastor of the church that they had planted, and he found her laying face down in a pool of blood. And that was just the start of many of these things that took place for them as a family. She went to the doctor to go ahead and get stitched up, and they found out that she had a heart condition. Also in that time, just a short time later, there's a big forest fire that was coming toward their house, and they were told by the local officials that they had about 15 minutes to grab anything that they could and get out of the house. It was a huge emotional upheaval time for them. Thankfully, God spared their home from being destroyed by the fire, but in that process, it just kind of got them realizing that God had something even greater for them. One day when Kara and her husband were about to head out for a date night, she went ahead and did a breast examination and realized that she found a lump. And she says in her story that she knew at that point that she had cancer. Over the course of the next several months, they found out that the cancer was to all different parts of her body and that she would have to go ahead and go through multiple treatments. One of the greatest things that took place through this time of cancer, Kara realized that this was an incredible blessing in disguise. While she struggled to go ahead and live from day to day, she realized that it was a choice she had to make to live for her family and not to get discouraged. During this time, a girl by the name of Brittany Maynard, who came to light, kind of came to the national forefront in news because she wanted to have a doctor-assisted suicide because she as well had cancer. Kara Tippett went ahead and wrote an open letter to Brittany Maynard and explained to her that she had so much more to live for, that she didn't have to look at life and look at the cancer as God stripping everything away from her, but realizing that her life could go ahead and make an incredible impact and be an incredible blessing to those around her. Kara Tippett wrote a blog called Mundane Faithfulness, and she talked about just going through the different difficulties of her life and through her cancer treatment, and she had an incredible following on her blog and had a truly amazing impact. But God saw fit to take her home in May of last year, 2015. Now, it's such a heartbreak to her family and to her church family. What was amazing about that story is my wife, we go out usually on Friday nights, we go out for a date, and so we decided to go to Barnes & Noble for this particular date night. So I'm there in the section on how to lead and how to be more effective in social media and different things like that. And so Amanda kind of disappeared into another part of the bookstore. And finally, after some time, I realized that time had got away from me and I hadn't seen her a little bit. And here I look down the aisle and she's walking toward me. She's crying. She's eyes are all red. I'm thinking, oh no, she got a phone call. Something must have happened. And so sure enough, I asked her, what's going on? And she took me back to the Christian living section of Barnes & Noble, and she showed me this book, Kara Tippett's story, and it reflects what I just told you. And she said, I just can't imagine going through what they're going through. And in that moment, it just arrested me and where I was heading. I had my head in all these leadership books and all these different things. And there I am, we're talking and having this moment, and she's crying, and I start to tear up. And it's the irony of it all. We're standing in front of, it says Christian Theology, and people are walking past us, and I can't imagine what they're thinking. There's this big guy crying in front of the Christian Theology. It just really moved me to tears. But I think back on Jason and Kara's story and how they have four kids, and now she's gone, and to think about the direction of her life, how she knew that over that course of time going through those cancer treatments, that her days weren't long on this earth. And if you go and you Google and look at her videos and some of her blogs and things, you'll be incredibly touched. One of the greatest things that I took away from that story was this, is I've got to think about where am I going to be? Where am I going to end up the day before I die? What do I want my life to look like? What is the direction I want to be heading in? And I think about her life and how all her priorities came in alignment and came into play. Why do I have to wait for something traumatic like that for me to get my priorities and get my direction in place? I've got all kinds of distractions, but what about the direction that I want to be heading in? When you consider and think about what direction are you heading? Are you heading closer to Jesus Christ, or are you heading further away from Jesus Christ? When you think about launching out, you want to have direction so that you're going somewhere to get from where you are to where Jesus Christ wants you to be. Are you getting closer to Him or further away? Hey, thanks so much for watching. And remember, true living is when you fulfill who God created you to be and when you accomplish all that God has called you to do. Thank you so much for watching and for giving your time to going ahead and cultivating your relationship with Jesus Christ. And remember this, live out your who in all you do. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.